Have you ever wondered what would happen if a man's worth was measured not by his title, but by the languages he spoke? Welcome to the story of Michael, a man whose quiet life as a janitor in a bustling corporate building masked an extraordinary intellect. His existence was a series of silent routines, sweeping floors, emptying trash, and watching the city's most powerful people stride by without a second glance. Then there's Mr. Caldwell, the CEO, a man who saw the world in dollar signs and believed a person's value was determined by their position on the corporate ladder. But one night, a chance encounter after hours shattered their perceptions. A late-night conversation, a simple misunderstanding, and suddenly, Michael's world of silence collided with Caldwell's world of power, revealing a truth that would leave the entire office stunned and redefine what it means to be successful. The city of Atlanta, a sprawling tapestry of steel and glass, hummed with the pulse of ambition. And nowhere was that pulse stronger than in the lobby of Zenith Tower on a crisp Monday morning. Sunlight sharp and unyielding speared through the soaring glass facade glinting off polished marble floors and designer briefcases. A symphony of productivity filled the air, the staccato click of high heels on tile, the rhythmic tapping of fingers on smartphones, the hushed urgency of conversations about deadlines and deals. Everyone, it seemed, was clutching a coffee cup like it held the secrets to success, always rushing a blur of purpose and power suits. Amidst this orchestrated chaos, a figure moved with a different kind of rhythm. Her name was Cassandra Jenkins, though most in Zenith Tower simply knew her, if they knew her at all, as the cleaning lady. In her burgundy uniform with her short, neat twists pulled back into a practical ponytail, Cassie was a master of blending in. She was like the elevator music of the lobby, always there, always doing her job, yet rarely truly noticed. She mopped, she wiped, she emptied trash bins after hours, a quiet, efficient force, keeping the gleaming facade of Vance Global spotless. Have you ever considered how many invisible hands touch your day? The baristas, the delivery drivers, the security guards, the very people who keep the gears of our world turning smoothly. We glide past them often without a second glance, caught in our own narratives, our own urgent battles. It's not out of malice, not usually. It's simply habit. A deeply ingrained, often unconscious bias that tells us to focus on the important people, the ones with the corner offices and the flashy titles, while the silent architects of our comfort fade into the background. But today habit was about to meet its match. Mr. Harrison Vance, the CEO of Vance Global himself, was making his usual swift journey from the underground parking garage to his penthouse executive suite on the 40th floor. A man of formidable intellect and global vision, his mind was already dissecting the day's first mergers and acquisitions report. He was halfway through his stride when it happened. A voice. Not just any voice, but one fluent, sharp, and rolling through a language he hadn't heard spoken with such native precision since his last visit to the company's Tokyo branch. Japanese. It stopped him cold. Not because it was Japanese, he dealt with international clients daily, but because of who was speaking it. He glanced around, thinking perhaps one of his international sales directors had come in early. But then he saw her. It was Cassie, the janitor. Standing near the touchscreen lobby directory, her mop bucket silently by her side. She was mid-conversation with an older Japanese gentleman who looked utterly bewildered and simultaneously profoundly relieved. Cassie was gesturing calmly, her voice warm and firm, directing him toward the elevators. Mr. Vance narrowed his eyes. He'd seen her before, of course. Passing through the halls after late meetings, always polite, always quiet, never made eye contact unless spoken to. He didn't even know her name. A tiny, almost imperceptible prick of guilt surfaced. He, the CEO of a global enterprise who prided himself on cross-cultural understanding, had walked past this woman for 15 years without truly seeing her. How many diamonds in the rough had he or his company inadvertently swept into the dustpan? He took a slow step forward. As he got closer, Cassie seamlessly wrapped up the Japanese conversation, offering a polite bow, and turned towards a delivery man struggling with a bulky package. "Tudo bem, senor? Posso ajudar com isso?" she said, fluidly, switching into perfect Portuguese. The delivery man blinked, then a relieved smile spread across his face. Sim, muito obrigado. Just as casually, Cassie then turned to a vendor nearby, looking utterly lost amidst a set of mislabeled boxes. Ah, monsieur, ce sont les dossiers du projet Éclat pour la salle de conférence B, par là-ci, she told him in French, pointing with a faint knowing smile. Mr. Vance's jaw clenched slightly. Not from anger, but from something tighter, something more profound. A sharp pinch of conviction. He'd worked in global logistics for over 2 decades, led international expansions, hired countless translators, built intricate cross-cultural training programs. Yet here in his own building, the most linguistically gifted person he'd encountered in months had been scrubbing toilets just 2 floors below his opulent office. It was a truth that hit him like a physical blow, stripping away layers of corporate complacency. He stepped forward, more curious than commanding now. "Excuse me." She turned toward him, startled, but composed herself instantly. "Yes, sir?" He smiled faintly. That was Japanese, right? "Yes, sir." "You speak it fluently?" "Yes." "And Portuguese, French?" She nodded. "Also, German, Arabic, Italian, Mandarin, and Swahili. And I read Latin, but I don't really count that." Mr. Vance blinked. He processed the list, his mind racing. "You're telling me you speak 10 languages?" "Yes, sir." There was no pride in her tone, no arrogance, just truth straight as a level beam. He stared at her for a second, trying to catch up to the dizzying fact that a janitor in his building, a woman who mopped floors in silence every night, was a walking United Nations. A profound question finally broke through his astonishment. "What's your name?" And that simple question finally asked was the first tremor of a seismic shift, not just for Cassandra Jenkins, but for the entire Zenith Tower. What happened next would challenge every assumption, ignite every whisper, and ultimately redefine what true value meant in the gleaming halls of corporate America. The invisible woman was about to become impossible to ignore. "Cassandra," Mr. Vance repeated, letting the name settle in the quiet hum of the lobby. "Miss Jenkins, are you free for a few minutes?" Her brow raised slightly, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Now?" she asked, a hint of caution in her voice. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but that built-in reflex people develop when they're used to being ignored or underestimated. That ingrained expectation that any sudden attention from someone in power usually means trouble, not opportunity. "Yes," Mr. Vance affirmed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I'd like to talk to you in my office." He pressed the elevator button, holding the door open as she stepped inside. The ascent to the executive floor was silent for a moment, the polished steel of the lift reflecting their contrasting worlds. Then, Cassie spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "I've worked here for 15 years, she said suddenly as they rose. "Never thought I'd be invited up." Mr. Vance gave a small, quiet smile. "You might be surprised how quickly things can change," he mused. But even he had no idea just how much was about to change, not just for her, but for him, and for Zenith Tower itself. The elevator dinged. Cassie stepped out first, her shoes making barely a whisper on the polished wood floor of the executive hallway. The air up here smelled different, like citrus and fine leather, the scent of money if you had to put a fragrance to it. Mr. Vance's assistant, a young woman named Brenda, glanced up wide-eyed at the sight of Cassie beside him. He didn't explain, just nodded for Brenda to let them through. Once inside the glass-walled office, Mr. Vance gestured to a chair across from his expansive desk. "Please sit." Cassie sat carefully, her hands folding in her lap, her eyes moving slowly across the room. She wasn't overtly impressed. She was observant. A massive world map hung behind Mr. Vance, each country dotted with colored pins, a testament to Vance Global's reach. On a side table, a tray of espresso cups sat next to a photo of his 2 daughters and a dusty award from a trade conference. Mr. Vance sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "So, Miss Jenkins," he began, his voice earnest,
I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect to have this conversation today. Cassie gave a small nod, her posture still, her face unreadable. She had faced countless questions in her life, but rarely one born of genuine curiosity. But I just heard you speak 3 languages like you were flipping light switches, Mr.
Vance continued. And I need to understand, how does someone like you end up working here cleaning floors? For a second, she didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the vast cityscape visible through the window, then back to him. There was a pause, a moment of consideration. This man was asking for the truth, not a polite evasion. You got time for the truth? She finally asked. I wouldn't have asked otherwise, he assured her. She sighed a slow release of air. All right then. She rubbed her palms together as if warming up the words, preparing to unveil a lifetime. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Only child. My dad was a shipyard worker, my mom a nursing assistant. They didn't have much, but they worked hard, pushed education like it was religion. Her parents, like so many hard-working, often unsung heroes, understood that knowledge was the true currency, the only inheritance they could guarantee. I got a full ride to a state university, majored in linguistics. Was halfway through a master's when my mother got sick. She paused, the memory still raw. I came home to take care of her, then my dad passed from a stroke 6 months later. Everything fell apart after that. This wasn't just a story. It was a common narrative of sacrifice, especially for many in the Black community, where family responsibilities often take precedence over individual aspirations. The weight of unforeseen circumstances, the crushing blow of loss, forcing dreams to be put on hold, sometimes indefinitely. I had a baby. Cassie continued, her voice steady despite the pain of the recollection. No money, no partner who stuck around. So I worked whatever I could find. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp jobs. Eventually, a custodial supervisor here offered me night hours. It let me pick up my daughter from school, pay the light bill. That's how I got here. Mr. Vance watched her, no blinking, just listening. He was witnessing not a tragedy, but a testament to unwavering resilience. But the languages, Cassie emphasized, a faint light entering her eyes. I didn't stop learning. I borrowed textbooks, listened to recordings, read newspapers in 10 different tongues just to stay sharp. It's what I do. It's the only thing I do that makes me feel like I still matter. Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't rehearsed or poetic. It was just plain truth. Most people never asked. She added, her gaze meeting his, a quiet challenge in her eyes. They saw the uniform and assumed. That last word, assumed, hung in the air like a heavy cloak, an unspoken accusation against the societal blindness that had shrouded her brilliance for so long. Mr. Vance sat back in his chair, the weight of her story settling into his chest like a stone. Cassie Jenkins was brilliant. That much was obvious now. But she wasn't asking for pity or even a handout. She was giving him the truth. Clean, clear, and a little heartbreaking. You ever think about doing anything else? He asked, breaking the silence. She gave a small shrug. Sometimes, but it's hard to dream when your rent's due. Silence fell again, but it was different now. Denser, full of something unspoken, but powerful. It was the silence of a mind racing, connecting dots, seeing a path forward where none had existed before. Mr. Vance reached for his notebook, jotting down a few lines. What are you writing? Cassie asked, her voice still calm, but a little curious now. He looked up at her, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. Ideas, he said, the word hanging pregnant in the air. But one idea in particular was already forming in his head, and it wasn't small. The gears had shifted. The CEO of Vance Global, a man accustomed to seeing only what was presented on paper, had just found a gold mine hidden in plain sight. And the next move, it wouldn't just change Cassie's life. It would challenge the very fabric of Zenith Tower. The stage was set for a dramatic, unforeseen ascent. The conversation stuck with Mr. Vance all day. Even during grueling budget reviews and urgent vendor calls, Jonathan Kellerman's, no Harrison Vance's, mind kept circling back to that morning, to Cassandra Jenkins, her calm voice, and the quiet, almost casual way she'd listed 10 languages like they were nothing.
That kind of fluency didn't just happen. It took years of discipline, insatiable curiosity, and a heart committed to growth, often against the harshest odds. He, the CEO, with all his resources, had never truly cultivated such profound linguistic mastery. He was forced to confront a humbling truth. Sometimes the most profound wisdom, the most invaluable talent, isn't found in a meticulously crafted resume or a glowing recommendation from an Ivy League professor. Sometimes the gold's already in your backyard, and once you realize that the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? Around 3:45 p.m., as the late afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the gleaming cityscape, Mr. Vance left the executive floor. Instead of heading for his waiting car, he rode the elevator down, past the bustling main lobby, past the quiet hum of the lower office floors, all the way down to the building's service level. He wanted to see something for himself. Down there, the air was warmer, thicker, with the scent of cleaning supplies and hard work. The walls were off-white, scuffed from the constant passage of carts and boots. He passed by maintenance crews on break, heard the distant clatter of dishes from a staff cafeteria, saw stacks of bottled water and industrial-sized cleaning solutions. Finally, he reached the janitorial supply room. He spotted Cassie through the open door, meticulously restocking microfiber cloths on a metal shelf, her movements precise and practiced. "Mind if I bother you again?" he asked, stepping inside. She turned, slightly startled. "You came down here?" she asked, genuine surprise in her voice. It wasn't every day the CEO descended into the unseen, often forgotten depths of his own building. He smiled. "Couldn't stop thinking about our talk." He paused, then got straight to the point. "Listen, I have a favor to ask." Cassie wiped her hands on her uniform shirt, a quiet, almost instinctive gesture. "What kind of favor?" "There's a meeting upstairs." Mr. Vance explained, his tone urgent but respectful. "A group from our Rio de Janeiro office came in early, and our translator canceled last minute. They need someone who understands Brazilian Portuguese, and not just the words, but the nuances." He watched her carefully. "Can you help?" Cassie hesitated for only a second. "Portuguese. Yes, she could do that." The slight flicker of doubt, the ingrained expectation of her role, quickly gave way to the quiet confidence of her ability. "Yes, I can do that." Minutes later, they were in conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives sat awkwardly checking their phones, a palpable tension in the air, born of unfamiliarity and the frustration of a linguistic barrier. Cassie stepped in quietly. She nodded, offered a polite, culturally appropriate greeting, and then began speaking. Her Portuguese was smooth, confident, infused with the natural rhythm of the language. Mr. Vance watched as the entire room shifted. Shoulders relaxed. Eye contact sharpened. She wasn't just translating. She was bridging a gap, making people feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that transcend mere words. When one of the visitors cracked a joke in Portuguese, Cassie responded with a warm laugh and a quick, witty return joke that had them all chuckling. Mr. Vance didn't understand a word, but he understood connection. He understood rapport. And he understood with startling clarity that this was far more valuable than any line item on a balance sheet. After 20 minutes, the meeting wrapped up. One of the Brazilian executives turned to Mr. Vance, his face alight with newfound ease. "She's better than anyone we've worked with this year," he said in English. "Where'd you find her?" Mr. Vance looked at Cassie, who was already quietly stacking empty coffee cups on a tray, her movements as efficient and unobtrusive as ever. "Right here," he said, a quiet pride in his voice. Back in the hallway, Mr. Vance caught up with her. "You ever do professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Just helped folks out in hospitals, government offices, things like that. No certificate, no time for school. My daughter needed me more." It was a simple statement, yet it carried the weight of years of sacrifice, of dreams deferred for the sake of survival and love. Mr. Vance nodded, understanding dawning on him. "And where is she now?" "She's 28, nurse in Phoenix, paid for school herself, stubborn like her mama." Cassie replied, a rare soft smile gracing her lips. And for a second, standing there in the busy corporate hallway, it didn't feel like CEO and janitor,
Just two people talking about life, about the quiet triumphs and sacrifices that shape us all. They returned to the service level, where Cassie clocked back in the familiar beep of the machine, sounding almost deafening after the high-stakes world she'd just navigated. She had 2 more floors to clean before shift change. But before she left, she said something that stuck with him, a testament to her profound humility and the invisibility she had grown accustomed to. "I didn't do anything special today," she murmured, almost to herself. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it looked to me." She gave him a small smile, a glimmer of something unspoken in her eyes, and walked off, disappearing back into the routine that had defined her for 15 years. That night, Harrison Vance sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything: the pressure to grow the company, the endless investor meetings, the constant discussions on diversity and untapped talent. All this time, they'd been looking outside, recruiting globally, searching for new blood, new ideas, new solutions. But sometimes the gold's already in your backyard. And once you realize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The quiet dignity of Cassandra Jenkins, her silent brilliance, had ignited a spark in him. And that spark was about to become a wildfire, burning away the old ways and forging a path for the truly unseen. The next morning, the rhythm of Zenith Tower was subtly, almost imperceptibly out of sync. Cassie's badge beeped at the wrong time. She had just finished wiping down the east lobby, the marble gleaming under her practiced hand, when her supervisor, a man named Leo, tapped her on the shoulder. His look wasn't exactly annoyed, but it wasn't normal either. "Hey, Cassandra," Leo mumbled, a hint of unusual deference in his tone. "Mr. Vance asked to see you again." Cassie blinked. The first thought, an instinct honed by years of being overlooked, was a chilling one. "Did I do something wrong?" Leo shook his head. "He didn't say. Just told me to send you up." She cleaned her hands on a towel, the familiar rough fabric, a stark contrast to the sudden surreal turn her life was taking. Then she followed the same path she'd taken the day before. Only this time, everything was different. This time, everyone in the building seemed to notice her. People she passed looked up. Some whispered. One of the receptionists even gave her a polite smile, like she knew something Cassandra didn't. It was a quiet shift, a ripple in the corporate pond, but to Cassie, who had moved through these halls like a ghost for 15 years, it was a tidal wave. When she walked into the executive suite, Mr. Vance stood near the panoramic window, sipping black coffee and staring out at the Atlanta skyline. "Come in," he said, not turning around yet. Cassie stood quietly by the door, a lifetime of humility keeping her rooted. Finally, he faced her. "I've been thinking," he began, placing his mug on a coaster, "about talent waste. How many people never get a shot, not because they're not good, but because nobody looks twice?" Cassie said nothing. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd seen too many people talk big and do little. Her life had taught her to be wary of promises that shimmered like mirages. "I want to create a new position," he continued, his gaze direct and unwavering. "One that didn't exist before. Something this company badly needs, even if we didn't know it now." Cassie furrowed her brow. "For what? Cultural liaison for global engagements," Mr. Vance stated, the words resonating with a new kind of power. "Someone who can speak the languages, read between the lines, handle visitors, vendors, documents. All the global touchpoints that we're constantly fumbling through." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The sheer audacity of the idea, the dizzying implication, stole her breath. "You're qualified. Probably more than most of the people in our leadership team, honestly. And you've already proved you can handle it with grace, patience, and brains." Cassie stared at him, her eyes narrowing slightly, searching for the catch, the punchline. "This real?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "As real as it gets." "I don't have a college degree," she countered, the age-old barrier, the invisible wall that had kept her out of rooms like this her entire life. "You have something better." Mr. Vance shot back, his voice firm. "Lived experience, commitment, and fluency in 10 languages. You think I care about a piece of paper?" He didn't just dismiss her concern. He reframed it, elevating her unique journey above traditional credentials.
This was a direct challenge to the very system that had kept countless talented individuals locked out for generations. She shifted her weight, still unsure, still searching for the why. Why me? He looked directly at her, his gaze holding hers. Because I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 900 a.m. yesterday, he said. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you. People doing twice the work for half the credit. This was not just about Cassie. It was about a systemic oversight, a deeply rooted injustice that he, as CEO, was now committed to correcting. Cassie crossed her arms, a flicker of that familiar skepticism returning. You know what people are going to say. The whispers, the resentment, the accusations of tokenism. She knew them all too well. I don't care. Mr. Vance replied, his conviction unshakable. She stared at him a long moment, stretching between them, filled with the weight of possibility and the echoes of a life unseen. Then she let out a slow breath. I've never had an office job, she said. Never had a title. You'll learn fast, he assured her. I don't have a wardrobe for this kind of thing. The practicalities, the small, often embarrassing details that keep many from stepping into new roles. I'll have HR send a clothing stipend, Mr. Vance replied, already anticipating her concerns. She gave a dry chuckle, a rare sound of genuine amusement. You thought of everything, huh? I'm trying, he said simply. A long pause stretched between them again. Then Cassandra asked softly a question that cut to the very core of her identity, of the responsibility she had carried for so long. What about my shift downstairs? Who replaces me? Mr. Vance smiled a genuine warm smile. We'll find someone, he said, but no one can replace you. For a long time, neither of them spoke. She looked down at her hands, then back at him, her eyes glistening. She blinked the tears away before they fell. Years of unspoken dreams of quiet sacrifices were welling up. All right then, she said, her voice firm, tinged with a newfound resolve. Let's see what I can do. He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was history being rewritten, a silent pact forged between a man determined to see beyond the surface and a woman ready to step into the light she had always deserved. But what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react. The ripples had begun, and soon they would become waves crashing against the shores of Zenith Tower's long-held traditions. The quiet revolution had officially begun. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the express elevators in Zenith Tower. Cassandra Jenkins, the janitor from the night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level position. Nobody knew the full story, just whispers that she spoke a bunch of languages, that the CEO himself had chosen her, that she might have some kind of secret background, maybe government work, maybe even undercover. The gossip bounced from cubicle to conference room, a frenetic, unsettling energy. Some folks were genuinely curious, their faces alight with a rare spark of wonder. Some smiled genuinely and said, good for her. A few whispered about diversity initiatives and checking a box. But not everyone was clapping. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants leaned close over their kale salads, their voices hushed but laced with undeniable resentment. I'm just saying, one whispered, her eyes narrowed. I have a master's in international business from a top school, and I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This lady was scrubbing urinals last week. Her friend shrugged, a cynical smirk playing on her lips. Maybe she knows something we don't. Oh, please, the first one scoffed. It's Vance trying to look progressive. Check a box. This exact energy trickled into boardrooms and Slack messages. A quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to upward moves coming from outside the usual well-defined ladder. It challenged their sense of fairness, their belief in the system they had painstakingly climbed. This is a common pitfall in organizations when change challenges the established order. Even positive change can be met with fierce, often illogical resistance from those who feel their own efforts are devalued. Cassie felt it the second she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. It was modest. Just a desk, a small plant, and a computer she hadn't touched yet. But to her, it looked like another planet, a galaxy away from the custodial closet and the endless corridors she used to clean. When HR finished onboarding her, she asked if she could keep her old night uniform, not to wear, she clarified, but just to remind herself. A tangible link to her past, a grounding force against the sudden dizzying ascent. That afternoon, she met with Mr. Damien Thorne, the imposing head of international operations. He walked in with a clipboard, and tight eyes, didn't shake her hand, didn't sit.
"So you're the new liaison," he said, the words delivered like a thinly veiled joke wrapped in politeness. Cassie looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "That's what I'm told." "You have experience in corporate environments." He probed a challenge in his voice. She offered a small, calm smile. "Only from the outside looking in." She didn't try to impress him or to pretend. Honesty was her armor. He didn't laugh. He dropped a thick folder onto her desk with a thud. "I've got reports from Italy, contracts from our Dubai partners, and an entire vendor issue in Rio de Janeiro. Think you can manage that?" Cassie stood up, walked to her desk, and picked up the folder. She felt the weight of it, the tangible representation of the challenges ahead. "I'll need a few hours to review," she said, her voice clear and steady. "But yes." Mr. Thorne pursed his lips, clearly expecting a different reaction, perhaps a sign of overwhelm or capitulation. But he found none. He simply turned and walked out, leaving Cassie alone with the daunting stack of documents. Later that night, Mr. Vance stopped by her office. He found her still there, the desk lamp casting a warm glow on her focused face. "How's day one?" he asked, a knowing smile on his face. Cassie exhaled, leaning back in her chair. "I've had worse. Damien give you a hard time?" "He doesn't scare me," she replied. "Figured." Mr. Vance paused, leaning against the doorframe. Then Cassie asked, "But can I ask you something? Anything? Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and kept moving." It was the question that had gnawed at her, a whisper of doubt amidst the whirlwind of change. Mr. Vance looked at her, his expression serious. "Because I saw myself in you." Cassie raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise. "You were a janitor?" "No." He chuckled softly. "But I was overlooked a lot. I came from nothing. My dad fixed cars in a town no one visits. I worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this." He shared his own story of quiet struggle of battling societal expectations and class prejudices to reach the top. It was a profound moment of connection, an unexpected bridge built between two seemingly disparate lives. Cassie nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her. "Now you're the one deciding who gets in," she observed. He nodded back. "Exactly." There was a beat of silence before Cassie looked down at the file on her desk, the weight of responsibility settling upon her. "I'll be honest," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm nervous." "Good," Mr. Vance replied. "Means you care." He stood straight, his gaze firm. "There's going to be people who hate this Cassandra. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." He turned to leave. As the door clicked softly behind him, Cassie looked around her office. She remembered the years she'd cried in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks, the nights she came home with aching feet, and barely enough energy to heat up soup for her daughter. The birthdays she missed. The promotions she watched go to people who never even said good morning to the cleaning crew. She opened her desk drawer and placed her old janitor badge inside, alongside her new company ID. Not to forget, but to remember exactly what it took to get here. To remember every single layer of her story. This journey wasn't just hers anymore. The spotlight was about to grow much brighter, and the coming days would test her resolve like never before. The greatest challenges and the most unexpected triumphs were still to come. By the end of the week, Cassandra Jenkins's nameplate was mounted outside her new office, sleek black letters on brushed steel proclaiming, "Cassandra Jenkins, Cultural Liaison Global Engagements." It looked official, clean, permanent. Word had gotten out formally this time. The company-wide email hit inboxes Friday morning, sent by Mr. Vance himself. It was short, clear, and carried weight. He explained her new role, her background, and more importantly, her value. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the best person for the job, period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers grumbled under their breath. Others softened up once they saw her in action. She navigated conversations with foreign clients better than the most advanced software. She corrected mistranslations in old contracts that had cost Vance global money for years. And she never showed off. She just worked. Quietly, smoothly, better than anyone had expected. This quiet competence was her most potent weapon against the whispers. She understood that results speak louder than any preconceived notions. On Monday, Cassie was asked to join a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. Vance Global's North African expansion had been stuck for months over miscommunication and mistrust. She walked into the room in a soft beige blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room changed. You could feel it, the shift. People leaned in. They listened. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. It's a bridge built not just with vocabulary, but with empathy and recognition. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached her privately. He touched his chest gently, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one's ever done that for us," he said. "Not in our language, not like that." Cassie nodded. "You matter," she said simply, profoundly. It was a truth she understood deeply, a truth she had longed to hear herself for so many years. By midweek, Mr. Vance made another move. He renamed the company's main training room where all new hires gathered for orientation and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The old plaque outside the door was taken down. In its place, a new one read, "The Jenkins Room." No big announcement, no party. Just a quiet sign, a profound shift that meant more than flowers or cake ever could. It was a declaration etched in brass that excellence could come from anywhere, and that Zenith Tower was ready to acknowledge it. Later that afternoon, Mr. Vance stood outside the room watching as a new group of interns filed in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who's that?" A senior staff member answered, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit." That same day, Cassie found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note. It read, "I used to think I'd be invisible forever, but today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching. People who needed to see what was possible. Cassie sat there staring at the words, her throat tightening. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Because that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a job. It was a door. A door for her, and a door for countless others waiting in the shadows. But not every door stays open without a fight. And someone was already planning to push back. The backlash didn't take long to show its face. Late Thursday, Cassie was called into a meeting. Not by Mr. Vance, but by someone higher up. Ms. Evelyn Albright, a senior board member who'd flown in from New York. She'd been with the company since the 90s. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. Cassie walked into the small conference room on the 37th floor, where Evelyn waited with a stack of papers and a flat stare. "Have a seat," she said without looking up. Cassie sat. Evelyn tapped her pen twice. "So, Miss Jenkins, I've reviewed your file. You have no college degree, no previous corporate training, and no management certifications." Cassie didn't flinch. "That's correct." Evelyn folded her hands. "You were a janitor here 3 weeks ago." "I was," Cassie affirmed, meeting her gaze steadily. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Cassie held her gaze. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultures. I've already fixed 2 vendor contracts and cleared a 3-month delay in our Morocco deal. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners that legal is finalizing next week." Her voice was calm, factual, letting her actions speak for themselves. Evelyn pursed her lips. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" Cassie smiled slightly. "No, ma'am. I think it should be run on results." Evelyn blinked. That was the first time Cassie had seen her hesitate. I don't need to be liked. Cassie added, her voice quiet but firm. But I do need to be useful. And I am. Evelyn stood and slowly closed the folder. You're a gamble. I'm used to that, Cassie said quietly. My entire life's been one. The truth of her words hung in the air, a testament to a life lived on the fringes defined by risks and sheer will. When the meeting ended, Cassie didn't return to her office right away. She walked out of the building and sat on a bench across the street, staring at the glass tower she now worked in. So many years she had walked past that building, wearing the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now, they all did. And some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. Hey, Ma. Her daughter answered, her voice bright. Everything okay? Cassie hesitated, then nodded to herself. Yeah, just needed to hear your voice. You sure? I'm sure? They talked for a few minutes, mostly about nothing. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a new movie she wanted to watch. But just hearing her laugh steadied Cassie. After they hung up, she sat in silence, drawing strength from the simple act of connection. Then she stood up, walked back across the street, and rode the elevator to her floor. The battle wasn't over, but Cassie Jenkins had just proven that her resolve was as unbreakable as the glass tower itself. By the next morning, word of the Evelyn Albright meeting had somehow spread throughout Zenith Tower, sparking a new wave of whispers. But to everyone's surprise, Cassandra didn't back down. She showed up early, spoke at a team meeting with quiet authority, and took a complex call with the German office without needing a translator, all while exuding a calm, sharp, unbothered demeanor. This public display of her unwavering competence was a powerful counter-narrative to any lingering doubts. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the whiteboard outside her office. It simply read, "We see you." No name, just 3 words that meant the world. It was a silent acknowledgement, a ripple of solidarity from the very people she had come to represent, those who had also felt unseen. In the following weeks, something strange and wonderful happened. People started coming to her, not just for translation, but for advice, guidance, and confidence. Cassie became the person people went to before they pitched a new idea to management. She'd sit with young interns, offering practical tips before their big presentations, her voice steady and encouraging. And she never ever talked down to anyone. She remembered what it felt like to be underestimated, to feel the crushing weight of invisibility. One afternoon, a shy Vietnamese intern named Gian, who often struggled to speak up in meetings, approached her. "How did you learn all those languages?" Gian asked, his voice barely a whisper. Cassie smiled. "One word at a time," she said softly. "Same way you will." It was a simple, profound lesson in patience, perseverance, and the belief that every great journey begins with a single consistent step. Cassie wasn't just doing her job. She was changing the culture one quiet interaction at a time. She was transforming an institution by simply being herself authentically and brilliantly. One afternoon, Mr. Vance joined her for coffee in the break room, a quiet tradition they had started. "Been hearing good things," he said, stirring his mug. Cassie sipped from her cup. "Been trying to ignore the bad ones." "You're making waves," he observed. She looked at him. "Is that a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here it means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the office a distant backdrop. "You know, Mr. Vance added, I've been thinking about starting a training program for internal talent, especially folks working non-desk roles. There's probably more Cassandras in this building." She nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "There are. They just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her, his expression earnest. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. "Already started in my head." By month's end, the pilot program launched. A new initiative called Voice Inside, designed to give workers across departments access to language training, leadership mentoring, and visibility across divisions. It was Cassandra's idea, born from her own struggles and triumphs, and it caught fire. It was a testament to Mr. Vance's vision, but even more so to Cassie's profound understanding of human potential. Eventually, Cassie was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Chicago.
a prestigious event where industry leaders shared their insights. She told her story not as a motivational tale full of self-congratulation, but as a stark reality check. "I was never just a janitor," she told the hushed crowd. "I was fluent, I was capable, I was ready, but nobody ever looked long enough to see it. So the next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you really missing?" The room was silent. And then it stood. A full resounding applause, a recognition not just of her journey, but of the universal truth she articulated. On her way out, a young man approached her, tears glistening in his eyes. "My mom's a housekeeper," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "And she speaks 5 languages. I used to be embarrassed to say that." Cassie touched his arm, her gaze warm and compassionate. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from," she told him. "The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than she ever had in her life. Not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit the role. She'd brought herself, every layer of her story, every quiet struggle, every hidden talent, with her. And that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code. Intelligence doesn't need permission. And brilliance can walk past you wearing a name tag holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when they do, don't be afraid to take that seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, made you feel, then please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the incredible human spirit. Your support helps us amplify these crucial stories. Thank you for listening.